Three. Okay. Now this is just a. Okay. I'm finally arriving here. And we're just going to see how this goes. Hey, from Florida. It's Sherry. Sherry's back. Um, so, just a grand experiment that you're here, that you're part of. I hope you can hear me. Let's see. Can you hear me? I hope so. Sherry, can you hear me? Oh, now we're down to three. Um, see if I put this on, then I get an echo back to myself, but a 10-second delay. It's all a learning process. I got to make this little window bigger also. But thank you so much for being here. Um, this is the experiment in the debrief of the Kelsey Darragh episode. I'm not sure if Kelsey's joining us because I don't know how to get her on the actual screen. So Kelsey, as I wrote about in the newsletter, I did not know who this person is, but she had written a book and she was very, very popular on YouTube, millions of views on YouTube, a former BuzzFeed person going out on her own. And I looked at the book and it's pretty good handbook. And then I did some research on her and I found her to be very profane. I thought, as I said in the interview, that I was very direct about a lot of things, very open-minded. But what I failed to account for was that I was not open-minded at all, or at least that I wasn't sharing as much as Kelsey did. And Kelsey, if you show up in this chat, please let me know because I don't know if you're here or not. And I find like people like Patton Oswalt or Peter Sagal or even Open Mike Eagle, they're from like the world of radio or comedy. They're from music. These are areas I know really well. The celebrityhood of YouTube people, I approach anthropologically because I don't want to be a snob and I don't want to be an old coot saying, well, you know, they're just talking about themselves. I don't want to be a stick in the mud or a codger. But I don't always get it because it seems to me that a lot of these people are talking about their own experiences, and then there's a relatability that sort of blooms somehow in the work that they do. And whereas I was taught in more traditional broadcasting arenas to kind of to force that idea of like, okay, I'm doing this story. I might put a little bit of myself in it, but I'm going to actively and openly discuss the universality of these conditions of like, here's what it's like to experience depression. Here's what it's like to experience a panic attack. And I think a lot of these young people, not even young people necessarily, a lot of the people in this young medium, I think, of the sort of YouTube creating lots of content world, just talk and then people relate to them. They skip the kind of pulling people along for the lesson about what about it is universal, right? So I'm talked to Kelsey for this episode. Zach Kornfeld from the Try Guys is coming up in a little while, and I interviewed Allison Gaskin, who does a show called Just Between Us, all YouTube stars. And I hope when I talk to them, I'm not like, you know, an old DJ who played swing music in the 1950s trying to understand what Elvis Presley is. I hope I'm giving it a little more clearance for that. But so Kelsey approached me, or was introduced to me through a Twitter user because Kelsey was looking for people to blurb her book. And I said, oh, sure, you know, I'll take a look at it. Looked at it, great. Gave her a blurb, great. And so we became pals. And I've discovered that there's this type of person who I always get along with really well. And it's extroverted, opinionated people who are doing things for the right reasons. So like not egotists necessarily, but just driven, loud people who want to do things and will just keep pushing and not back down from other people. I am not like that myself. I if I don't see a clear path right away, I kind of slink back and try to sneak in sideways a little bit. But the extroverted door smashers, I just get along with them really well. I find them delightful, and I dig them. And so Kelsey's one of those. And I also started doing this thing a few years ago now, where if I meet somebody and I sense that they could be a friend, I just start referring them to them as a friend wherever I go. Like, that is a friend of mine. I'll even say to them, you and I are friends. Like, I'll just announce it as a judgment that has been made. So on the old show, when I interviewed Neil Brennan, totally got along with Neil Brennan, totally just understood him. And then I emailed him later saying, by the way, we're friends now. I've declared it. We're friends. And he said, oh, okay. So that's one of the reasons why in this Kelsey Darragh interview, I put in the copy, Kelsey and I are friends, because I just think it's a good thing to do, to just declare something as a fact, not as an invitation, but just as a fact that you're friends with somebody. I think everybody should do it, announce it to the world, and it's a little bit like with kindergartners. They'll just say, "Hey, you want to be my friend?" But I go even more direct than that. Now we are friends. Now Jose and I are friends. We are friends now. It is an immutable fact. So yeah, this is a type of guest in Kelsey, and I'm trying to think. There's a few others coming up that are like this, where I'm not from the same world as this person, so we're not going to have a lot of the same people in common. We're not going to have a lot of the same experiences in common. Kelsey talks very openly about, like, yeah, I was a star athlete. I was the lead in all the plays in high school. I was, like, clearly she was a popular kid who did well. And the world is sort of built for people like her to succeed, except that she had chronic mental illnesses and all sorts of problems that she's still trying to get a grip on. So, whereas if I'm interviewing like an Andy Richter or a Mike Birbiglia, like, oh, okay, we're middle-aged guys who are in comedy or comedy adjacent. There's a lot of sort of empathetic response I have to a guest like that, guys around my age with an interest in pop culture. But I really love the ones with somebody like Kelsey, where I'm like, what is the deal with you? And so you can kind of hear, if you listen to the episode, you can hear a sense of anthropology, I think, to the conversation that we have, because I just don't know. I don't get it all the way. Like, I get it with being interested in mental health, finding an audience when you talk about mental health, and getting into some life purpose stuff. But I'm just baffled. I realized listening to this episode in the car when it came out yesterday, like, oh, we got pretty profane there with the clips we were using from her shows. Sophia Nygaard. That's a Scandinavian last name, but that doesn't look like a Scandinavian first name. Sophia Nygaard. Movie Fargo kind of comes to mind. But yeah. So anyway, that's a little bit about Kelsey, and I'm trying to dip my toe in these waters of the YouTube stars, of the people, and Zach Kornfeld is like this too. People who can make hour-long episodes of just talking to each other, no guest, maybe just a multiple host show. In Kelsey's case, sometimes just herself talking uninterrupted, no edits, for like an hour or more. I don't know how they do it. It's not how I grew up. But again, anthropologically. I like to study the customs of other cultures and travel there with passports and, water purifying pills. I don't know. I like to go there and wear special hats. Oh, okay. Father is Scandinavian and her mother is Indian. I'm going to look into that. Thank you, Sherry. Here's what I want to know is what are some things that you want for this show going forward? I know my friend Krista Tippett has hosted this show On Being forever, and they put out the episodes of their interviews, and then they put out the raw tape too. So like if she speaks with, I don't know, Brene Brown or John Kabat-Zinn, and they tape for 2 hours, they'll release the full 2 hours of the interview. And so they'll have the part where they kind of move the parts around and they'll narrate things and contextualize things, and then they just go deep. I think it's more of a fit with Krista's show because it's this heavy spirituality kind of thing. But I don't know, maybe people would want that. Like, tell me, and if not now, some other time, or on Twitter, or on Facebook, whatever it is, write into Depresh Mode at MaximumFun.org. Tell me like what kind of other things beyond the podcast and this experiment that we're doing here you'd like to see. Like, should we start a book club? Should we lean heavily into I don't know, what are they Twitch? Should we be on Twitch? Should we be on I don't even remember all the other ones. These sort of group phone call things that people are getting into now. Tell us where you'd like to see us and what might help you the best. Something I'd really like to know. MT, the state of Montana is writing in. I noticed there was a tonal difference with episode 2, and I laughed quite a bit about how adult-themed the conversation got at points. Yeah, so Kelsey talks about painting in a clip from her YouTube that we played. She talks about painting her. I don't even want to use the words because I get embarrassed and all a flutter. Painting her nether region parts, and why she did that kind of thing. She talks about some condition that she was treating in her nether parts, that she put the treatment in the wrong hole in her nether parts. It gets really, really graphic pretty quickly in the episode. And I think that I just sort of follow the tone of the guest. And so when the guest is just out there and brash and brassy, I follow along with that, and I try to keep up. If it's a author who's a little more pensive, I have an interview with Stephanie Whittles Wax coming up in a few weeks about her brother's overdose, and it doesn't really get it's not full of yucks. There's some laughs in it. They're hard earned, but I think for me it comes back to the fact that before I ever got into Q&A with guests, that's good. Twitch, before I ever got into radio, I was an actor, and so you go into a scene on stage or on screen with somebody, and you kind of give yourself over to them. And so whatever they're presenting to you, you tend to kind of reflect back, and not mirror exactly, but sort of connect with and converse with in that way. So if somebody brings me a high degree of energy, I probably won't match it. I'll probably try to rise up and come in just under that, because you don't want to, you don't want to just be like Edward R. Murrow, under there and the understated newsman. But if they're quiet and hushed and talking in public radio tones, I know the public radio voice. I've been there for 20 years. So I'll drop down so that they're hearing something consistent. And it's also sort of reflexive, I think. But yeah, Kelsey's a blast. I'll fill you in. I think some of you were here for the last session. Really excited for next week. We have an episode about burnout. Huge research project done in 45 countries, thousands of people, found that 89% of the respondents had a decrease in the pleasure of life during COVID as part of their jobs. And so burnout is high when you have to go to work. When you have a job, you have to go to work. You don't like it as much as you used to. It doesn't feel as meaningful as it used to. It's harder to do than it used to be. And something that Jennifer Moss, our guest, talks about that have really been stuck in my head is that a lot of employers right now are, and historically, have taken the approach that, yeah, if you're burned out, that's a you problem. That's a problem with the employee. And so here is a meditation app where you can listen to the ocean waves for 30 seconds and that'll fix you. Or here's a discounted gym membership, or we're going to, give you, there's going to be yoga classes that you can do at lunch instead of having lunch. But all these programs being put out by employers, the message is the same, like, you better fix yourself. When in fact, what's happening is that the location and definition of a workplace has dramatically changed over the last year, where you are trying to run things for your job, in many cases, at home. Maybe you're trying to teach your kids school or facilitate their going to school in the dining room while you're working out of the kitchen. It's ridiculous. It's not built for efficiency, so the work piles up, and the employers will just shrug and say, well, you're lucky to have a job. So that's coming up next week. I'm really excited about that. I can't stop thinking about it because she talks about this idea of workplace hygiene, which is the bare minimum that you need to do your job, like safe conditions, like fair pay, stuff like that, just the basics in order to get by. And then you need to you can't be motivated unless it's a safe, normal place where you don't have to think about your conditions. You could just think about your job. So then I reached out to some listeners. That's right, before the show even premiered, I reached out to listeners of the old show. And every one of them I found was in this condition where they didn't have the hygiene of their job met. They were, they didn't understand what was being asked of them. They were being asked to do more labor without additional support. Like all these things were just, this is how burnout happens. So of course there's a burnout epidemic going on right now. Burnout is why it's important to look at the turnover rate when you apply for a job. If people don't stay long, it means the employer isn't supporting their employees. I have a place I used to work where in the department I used to work, they're just losing people left and right now. And I can't help but wondering this huge flow out of this particular employer if it's a hygiene thing, like what's going on there. I don't know. I don't want to speculate, but it's really interesting to see. And Jennifer's perspective, Jennifer Moss, who I interview, because I said, isn't this the way of capitalism ultimately? Like you are a replaceable cog who exists while you last to profit your corporate masters. I've become sort of a Marxist since getting laid off. And she said, yes, but the smart companies will say, oh, we need to make this better. We need to nail down the hygiene so we can keep people. We don't have to train new people. We can have people motivated to be here. We can have better candidates. So she's hoping that's where it goes. And I am dubious, but I hope she's right. So Anyway, I think we'll wrap up there. Thank you everybody for joining us. Book club is some. Sherry says some of the best books I've read in the past 2 years I found from Thwad. I hope you'll find a lot more new ones from DM. There's no real way to abbreviate Depresh mode, I don't think. Especially, it sounds like an abbreviation. I mean, even Depresh is an abbreviation of depression. So anyway, I hope you'll find more books there. I'd like to know where we should do it. I try to do as few things on Facebook as possible because I don't think they're evil, but I think they're amoral. And I don't know if YouTube is that much better or Google is that much better. Who owns YouTube? Or, if we should do these meetings like at a puppet show in a multi-purpose room at the public library. I don't know where best to do them, but I'm going to keep looking into that. But yeah, let's think about the book club. There's a lot of good books out there right now, as you know, and I'll see if we can get that going. Riff off the book club. Oh, the movie recommendations might be a neat carryover. All right, I'm going to think about that. There's a lot we can do right now, and we'll make that happen. All right, so that's it for this week. I am going to do this next week. I'm going to talk about burnout next week on Tuesday at 1 p.m. So a week from today, an hour earlier than this started. So 1 p.m. Central. It may be other times in other parts of the country and the world. I don't know. I don't live there. It's baffling to me. But 1 p.m. I'll have had lunch. I'll have rested a little bit, and we could talk then about the burnout episode. So it's coming up. That's burnout is next week. Then Open Mike Eagle, and then Jenny Lawson, the bloggess, will be on the show. So we're just getting started. It's a brave new world. I'm so happy. It's the happiest I've ever been making shows, and did I watch Ted Lasso, Jose? I have only watched it all the way through twice. So, I'm behind some people. But Ted Lasso is good. It'd be fun to have a book club that's just talking about TV shows. All right. I'll try to figure out how to make my little rectangle here bigger in the future. But I can't believe this worked. This worked better than I thought. So that's it for now. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for being here. We will continue to tinker and make new shows. Bye-bye.